three things about Mort and why it's so great. It's hilarious, impactful message, and efficient storytelling. I just love it when you just go, there is no fat to that thing. Unlike Richard's stomach. I'm so sorry. I felt so mean. I take it back. It's on the internet forever. It was so easy. I'm sorry. I'll put it for you. He's going angry.
It's funny because it's true.
No.
Welcome everyone to the To The Round podcast. My name is Richard.
My name is Austin.
And today, I'm excited. We're talking about Discworld today, baby.
You're scaring me. Oh my God. You're more excited than me?
Excited.
What?
We actually get to gush about this
That's
one.
my
we
thing.
agree.
I'm the excited one. You're the stupid, boring one.
No, I'm the well-calculated,
I know.
stoic one.
You're the one.
Get it right.
You're the one that talks with actual authority and people listen to you. I'm the one that just goes like, oh, he likes a thing, and that's
See,
it.
That's the thing. People like the curmudgeon's opinion.
Yes.
Because when the curmudgeon actually likes something, it feels like, oh, that's rare. It's nice. You're happy. And so people don't take opinions seriously from happy people. They take these sad person opinions.
That's Simon Cowell, Gordon Ramsay, Richard last name. Not going to dox you in front of everybody. We're talking Mort.
We're talking Mort.
Discworld. This is obviously, you could tell by the sound of our voices and the rare enthusiasm from Richard's voice. We like Mort. We love Discworld. I love Mort. So Discworld in general. Oh, by the way, we're going to do 10 minutes of spoiler-free on Mort, and then we'll get into spoilers about the book, as always. So if you're here and you haven't read it yet, you can still listen in. Discworld. For those unfamiliar, Rich, what is the Discworld, the world of discs, the flat disc of Discworld?
Discworld. As everyone knows, the world is flat.
Yes.
It's a flat disc on the back of 4 elephants, and those elephants are riding on a great turtle that is swimming through space. Where the sun is actually rotating around the disc through the legs of the elephant, and light is so slow it has to catch up to the sun.
And there are 42 books in this absurd world, right?
Yes.
So to put this in context, this is book 4 of Discworld, but you don't have to read like 1, 2, 3, 4 in order. You could jump around because Discworlds are more like these serialized. There's some things like this is a death book, so there's 3 death books in the series, but you don't have to start with book 1. Actually, it's recommended you don't start with book 1.
Yes. I'm currently reading it chronologically.
Yeah.
But that's because I read a couple of the other books out of order, loved it, and was like, you know what? I want to read this chronologically. But you don't have to.
You don't have to, and I would say Mort is a great place to start with Discworld.
I think it's a good one. I don't even think it's the best. Here's the thing. What I love is I love this book. I don't even think it's the best death version book. Like, there's several books in the death series. Yeah. This isn't even the best one. It's not the best Discworld book.
And yet it's
fantastic.
It's a great introduction, I think.
Yeah.
Now, the books are written by the one and only Terry Pratchett.
Terry P.
I think that this is the book series that just we unite in our love for the author, for the series. I know, like, for some reason, even with Stormlight, which we both love.
Yeah. We can find a disagreement. I feel a reason to disagree with you.
I just love Stormlight too much. We're just like, I have to be the Simon Cowell, the Gordon Ramsay. I'm seeing the pattern here. But with Discworld, we're just vibing.
We are vibing. All right, let's get into Discworld and like Terry Pratchett himself. So Terry Pratchett is an author who writes absurdist fantasy. He has passed now, but during his life, he actually came down with a severe mental disease that took a lot of his memory from him. It was a mental degenerative disease. And I think that perspective of his brought a lot of nuance and intrigue to Terry's view on death. And I think it's very important where he didn't have this disease here during the writing of this book.
When did he? When he was writing Discworld, at a certain point, he
was diagnosed with this, and it's really fascinating because before that, people sent in letters to Terry Pratchett.
Yeah.
The most heartfelt thing that he said he got was a letter saying, "I'm on death's door, and reading your books, I pray that death is like your character of death."
Oh.
And I hope that when I meet someone on the other side, it'll be like your character.
Is there any higher compliment to an author ever?
I don't think so. Like,
No.
Death is one of the best characters in fiction. This book is great. It gets even better later on. But that's how important Terry Pratchett is, I think.
Yeah.
And this book is a great example of, you want to go right into what this book is exactly about?
I got to say, to go off of that, as a spoiler-free summary of what is Mort. What is Mort? It's such a short book. It's what? I think it's 90,000 to 100,000 words. And why you should read Mort right now is, just like Richard said, this book will make you smile. It's hilarious. And there's also a message to it. It's not a pointless, absurdist world where it's just, we're just going to go have a time. There's a message behind the hilarity of it, which is amazing. And like we said, this is book 4 of Discworld, but you could start with this one if you have read no Discworld. So it's a great introduction. Mort's fantastic. I want to give you your flavor if you want to add on to the little intro there of why I think Mort is a great intro. You've read other Discworld books. Would you say there's a better one to start with than Mort? Or was Mort in that category of, this is also a good one to start with?
It's in that category, but I wouldn't put it first. I would put Small Gods, Guards, or personally Going Postal. I'd put those higher in their intro to the Discworld. And that's mainly the main reason is, with the exception of Small Gods, I think Ankh-Morpork is a vitally important part of what makes Discworld.
And that's in Mort.
Barely.
Okay.
It's there, kind of. It's not really there. But point being, this whole series is about death. Like, the most important parts is death and Ankh-Morpork, the city.
Right. Mort. This book follows 2 characters. It follows Death and Mort, which Mort is the French word for, it's the short for mortal and death and so forth. Right. So it follows Death and Mort are the 2 primary characters, where Death is this essential parody, but also not parody, just this fictionalized version of the representation and symbolism of death itself.
Yeah.
And Mort is a simpleton. Mort, here's a line from Mort. He often wonders why the sun only comes out during the day and not at night when the light would come in much more useful. That is Mort. So Mort, you have this backwards way of thinking character who it has the introduction chapter. There's no chapters actually in Discworld, so I can't say that. The introduction to the book, the first couple pages, is Mort is having a tough time finding a job. So you know who he has with him? He has his dad, whose dad's trying to help him get a job at this job fair, and they get confronted by Death. Death himself.
And
the Grim Reaper.
Death wants to go on a holiday, so he's looking to get an employee, an intern, to take over his work for a time.
And, well, look at that. There's this Mort guy who he can get on board, and his dad thinks, like, this is an undertaker because he can't see the real Death. But Mort sees Death, and he gets this new job with Death, and we find out throughout the story the arcs are following Mort becoming maybe more like Death himself, and the Death Grim Reaper trying to become more human. And it's a story about what happens when those 2 characters change roles, and how does a simpleton act as a Grim Reaper? How does a simpleton take the job of a Grim Reaper, and what are the repercussions of that?
Yeah.
Really fun book, and that's the summary of the book, but personal feelings, Rich.
Yeah.
What do you think of Mort?
I had actual out loud moments of like shock in this book. We'll talk about it later. There's a certain scene to me that threw me. And there's some narrative tricks where Terry Pratchett is such a unique writer where he uses unique writing tricks that not really any other author does.
Does that probably, sorry to interrupt that, but
Yeah.
I think that comes from, wasn't he a newspaper reporter? Or wasn't his job covering stories in the real world? Something to do with, like, he was a story chaser, I think.
I believe you're right.
Do you think that's why he has the unique style that other people don't? Or is that
It could be.
Yeah.
Certainly a possibility.
Okay.
But
you're going on, he has this unique style, and what does that do for you?
well, it makes it unique of, this is one of the books that you can really enjoy the audiobook version. And Audible has or Penguin Random House has some great cast versions of these books, which are fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic reads. However, there's something special about physically reading these books because it's not straightforward. There's little asterisks where you have an addendum at the bottom of the page for little side notes, which absolutely wonderful experience of trying to jump back between and read these. You have the narrative of how specifically death talks, and we'll get that later, which is just so ominous and heavy feeling. I love it. And it's such a simple little tricks. Anyway, I've fell in love with this book, and I think this is the book that really propelled me through the rest of the series.
If I could summarize 3 things about Mort and why it's so great, it's hilarious, impactful message, and efficient storytelling. I just love it when you just go, there is no fat to that thing. Unlike Richard's stomach. I'm so sorry. I felt so mean. I take it back. It's on the internet forever. It was so easy. I'm sorry. I'll put him for you. He's going angry.
It's funny because it's true.
No. I should have said I'm me. It was supposed to be self-deprecating.
You don't have fat
I just
on you.
Shut up. Okay. I'm sorry, Rich. I just know off the pod you would have been like, you stupid son of a. I'm getting destroyed after this. Okay. But it has a profound message of, I'll give you a little snippet here of what the profound message is, of reality versus perception.
And
we'll get more into that.
Perception itself can make reality.
Yeah, and a message about fate. And that's in this funny little book.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so
you mind telling me what public opinion? People have heard what we think about.
Okay.
What is public opinion about?
Well, guess what, Rich? Just like we planned this, Goodreads has a 4.24.
That's a fantastic score.
For Goodreads, it is.
For Goodreads.
And also, this is the book club of the month we had for our Patreon. Hello, patrons. Thanks for reading this with us, where we discuss at the end of every month with our patrons. And this was well beloved by all of them. I think they all rated it in like the 8 to 9 range.
Yeah.
Around their 8 to like 8.75, whatever range. Everybody had a great time. It was more of us just kind of gushing about the book, going, wasn't this funny? Wasn't that impactful? Wasn't that cool? And as we get onto this discussion, there's some cool snippets that you found out about the book as well.
And so, if you guys are interested in joining us for a book club discussion, why don't you click that link down below for our Patreon, where you join our Discord exclusive. Once a month, we talk about a book. We have a book club with all of you. It's a lot of fun.
It wouldn't be a Tutor Ramble video without a Patreon plug within the first 10 minutes. Listen,
there's no way that we will cancel ourselves for a bad ad read. That's why we got to give it.
Display, we're fired. We're out of here.
We do our best, but you know what? Sometimes they don't like it.
Our best is never good enough. That's the problem.
Never is.
What did you rate Mort out of 10, Rich? What's your official spoiler-free Richard Rambler rating?
The official Richard Rambler rating is a 7.95. Hold your horses. That was a miscommunication.
Sorry, I had butterflies for a second. I went, oh, he gave something a 9 for the first time in his life.
There are other Discworld books that I'd say would be the 9.
Like Small Gods.
Yeah, actually.
Small Gods for me is well above a 9. I gotta say, I know we feel similarly about this book. My spoiler-free rating, Austin Ramble rating, which doesn't have the alliteration, 8.9 out of 10.
Fantastic score.
Fantastic. And
I'm not getting, honestly,
No.
I'm looking at this like, even though that I'm objective and right in all things.
Of course.
I want you to be more right. I'm fine.
You're rooting for the higher score.
I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for your higher score. I don't want to rate it lower than that. So I'm happy for you to convince me to raise the score.
Okay. I will try to do that. I'll try my best, because this is a great book. I like Small Gods better. I do just be a Small God. Oh, they're just great. They're just great. Want to get into spoilers because we gotta do.
I think so.
Talk. Okay. Spoiler warning for everybody. If you have not read Mort, this is your warning. But hey, still listening if you don't care about spoilers, I guess, right?
I guess.
Okay. Category time.
Yep.
What did you rate emotional impact out of 10?
I gave emotional impact an 8.5 out of 10.
Excellent. I get 8.75. We're very close.
What was some of the big emotional moments of this book for you?
So obviously we're gonna have a lot of talk about why things are funny and just how his prose is incredible and the story itself. But the first thing I want to talk, an emotional impact, I like to first do the message. Like, what was the point of the book, and did it get that point across? And I think the message of the story is perfectly said on page 99, depending on the version you have. But this is the wizard Cutwell was saying this to Mort. Okay? And Cutwell says, let's suppose you went out of here and prowled around the palace. One of the guards would probably see you, and he'd think you were a thief, and he'd fire his crossbow. I mean, in his reality, you'd be a thief. It wouldn't actually be true, but you'd be just as dead as if it was. Belief is powerful stuff. I'm a wizard. We know these things. Look here. that little paragraph message there of him telling Mort and showing Mort that it doesn't matter if you actually are a thief. The reality doesn't matter. His perception, their perception of you, you'd be dead. So if they think you're a thief and kill you, doesn't really matter if you weren't a thief your whole life. You're still dead. So that message surrounding and when we get into the plot of this book of reality splitting and what is actually true and what isn't, it's just a message, a really profound message, and every element in the story surrounds that message of reality versus perception.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it goes beyond to what actually is the afterlife, where Death explains how the afterlife is actually whatever someone believed when they were alive. So if someone believes in reincarnation, then when they die, they're reincarnated. Yeah. If someone believes in a certain type of heaven and hell, that's what they get. So it is so the afterlife for the souls in Discworld is what they perceive. Yeah. It's their perception.
Not real, but like, hey, if I think I could be reincarnated,
the thing is,
you do.
It is real.
It becomes real because of their perception.
Their perception becomes real.
Yeah.
Every unique one. And that's the fact that is there, and that's a part of the message as well. The message is not tacked on. It's fully realized through the rest of this book.
So if I perceive us as friends, does the reality not matter?
I mean, in many ways, your actions. Yeah. So if you believe we're friends,
but it's actually
regardless
not true.
Of whether it's true or not, it'll affect your actions the same.
Right. So if I'm
whether we're friends or not, if you believe
my delusion,
your
delusion affects the reality.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mort. Thank you, Terry Pratchett, for helping me understand this. It does. I like how messages like this, you could use them in all facets of life, of like whether perceptions do actually affect your reality and why that does matter more. Because there's a very true point to that. Mm-hmm. Because who cares? I mean, 1984 George Orwell. Like, the truth is 2 + 2 doesn't equal 5. But the perception of people and the reality of it doesn't matter as long as the society itself is perceiving it a certain way. And you could extend this to so many different facets of life. I love that message.
Yeah. And I think another emotional moment for me, I just kind of want to get right out of the gate.
Go ahead.
The biggest emotional moment for me, spoilers here, is when Mort, for the first time, talks like Death.
Yeah.
For this whole book, Death is when he talks, he doesn't get quotations. Everyone else, their words are in quotes because it's someone talking.
Yep.
Death is a part of the world. And so when he talks, it's just the text without quotes and in bold. And it always feels odd and different. It adds a layer of separation between Death and everyone else. And so when you're reading Mort's line and he's talking and it's in quotations and he says, I am not boy, I am Mort. And it's bolded. And the last part of that is bolded without quotation marks.
Yeah.
You have to do a double take and go, wait a minute, what just happened there? Excuse me, did I read wrong? Did Death walk in the room? Hold on a minute. And it's such a great moment. I was so emotional during that scene.
That's sweet, because the whole point of the story had Mort becoming Death and Death becoming human, because Death's dialogue, as it goes on, starts to become more in regular quotations.
Yeah.
So some of those most fun scenes are when that switch begins to happen, where you see Death interact with all these humans, and it's like, what is fun? Is drinking is fun? Okay. Cooking is fun? Okay. And it continues the message of fun is what you make of it. Perception is what you make of it.
Exactly.
And Death is figuring it out, because Death is this not ominous being, but just this ethereal being that isn't actually human. So he's trying to be like, why do we humans think this is fun and this isn't fun? Because.
Mainly because the glands. Humans got glands. And
Science.
Death doesn't have glands.
And those glands are they're working different ways to make you think things are more fun than other things. It's when you ask yourself the question, like, why is that thing fun, Richard? If I ask you, why is reading fun, Richard? Answer that for me.
Because I have fun.
See? Like, what
That's
else?
the lesson. You don't need to. Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
It's funny that Death has to learn that lesson.
Yeah.
Because Death, when he brings people to the afterlife, he knows this. He knows that perception is power and makes reality. He completely understands this. And yet when he's trying to understand humans, he is trying to analyze of like exactly why is this fun? Because he doesn't particularly feel it. And he doesn't have the perception. He can't perceive things the same way humans do. And so he's trying to look at a more objective realm. And it's very strange because he should know this message, but he just doesn't feel it.
That you illustrating that as well. I just think it's neat how when we initially talk about Mort, which this whole book's just funny.
Yeah.
The first thing we go to is the message, which is even more impressive because Terry Pratchett doesn't just write nonsense. The thing that makes it real is that it's absurd, but it fits so well together, which we'll get in world building more so. I just love that because there's the hilarious moments. I have a ton to talk about in dialogue and prose.
Yeah.
But is there any cherry on top you want to add to why this emotionally resounded with you, other than what we've already mentioned?
I think that's we'll get into maybe more details in plot and all that stuff. But
Plot, then, what'd you give out of a 10? Out of a 10.
Out of a 10. I gave plot a 7.25.
Okay, good rating. I gave it a 9. But I don't think I'll get pushback from you on this.
No, not particularly.
Interesting.
Here's the thing. The only reason why it's not like even more higher, I would say for me, the by and far best parts of the book was the plotting for Death. Death's plot was near perfection. Mort's maybe mixed bag. Like, could it be cut, trimmed? I don't know. I was definitely far more excited about Death's scenes than I was about Mort's.
Mort's scenes?
I had plenty of great moments in Mort, but not the complete enthrallment that I have with Death's scenes.
Death was what did shine in this. I'll give you that.
So that's just the only thing I'm putting on. So
okay, as we're going through the plot for Mort, you have Mort and Death. As we discussed, going through their different Mort becoming more Death, Death becoming more like a human, and trying to figure out what that is to be human. But the story starts off. Act 1, intro is Mort is trying to get a job. His father's trying to help him. He's a simpleton, can't get any other job. Death comes. The catalyst is boom. Hey, guess what, Mort? You're working with Death from now on. Death needs a little vacation.
What happens after Death invites Mort to his world?
So we've got Mort. He is in the world of Death. He sees Isabel, who is Death's daughter, and Albert, Death's manservant, who comes out to be a big wizard who's very powerful. Whatever, right? So Death takes Mort to his domain here, and Mort later accompanies Death as he travels to collect the soul of the King of Stolat. I love the names he has in this world. Stolat, what a name. It's STO space LAT. Isn't it nice? Stolat. Simple. I don't know why I like it. I do. It's simple. And this king is about to be assassinated by the scheming Duke. Like, it reminds me of you, you little schemer, Richard. So after Mort tries to prevent the assassination, Death tells him, like, hey, deaths are predetermined. You can't just stop fate itself. If you're going to take this job as the Grim Reaper, Mort, you got to take this seriously, he says to the simpleton who doesn't take things seriously. So you can't interfere with fate. And Death is like, good, I got that across. I can now go on a vacation. But so later on, Death now assigns Mort to collect the soul of Princess Kelly. And Princess Kelly's was already seen in this earlier scene because she's the daughter of that king that was just murdered. Mm-hmm. And Mort now goes back. And of course, because what Discworld does great and what Discworld really does well, and Terry Pratchett does well, is he parodizes fantasy. Mm-hmm. But to parodize fantasy itself, like, Rich, I know you agree with me on this, he's not making fun of it in a rude way. He's not making fun of fantasy in a disrespectful way. You know he loves it so much because in order to create a parody of something, you have to be a true expert in the genre itself and in storytelling itself.
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways to make fun of something. It's from a place of hate or from a place of love. And often, I would say 99% of the time, the joke coming from a place of love is typically funnier. Because when you come from a place of love, you deeply understand something. And when you deeply understand something, the joke lands better.
So you love me?
I don't think I tell that great of jokes about you.
You're so right. When you are actually here's a great example. You are only able to create a great parody of something if you deeply understand it, like someone like Quentin Tarantino. Or Quentin Tarantino creating Pulp Fiction, the reason why that storytelling is kind of so weird and janky, the storytelling, the plot happens in different orders, the dialogue was never seen before where people talked about McDonald's in a car. The reason that worked is Quentin Tarantino's an expert storyteller, so he's able to get that across of like, hey, I know storytelling so well, I can break the rules and it's entertaining because you have to know the rules in order to break the rules.
Yeah.
That sort of
Completely.
Yeah.
It comes across that all of the jokes that Terry Pratchett has for the fantasy genre comes from place of love because he deeply loves fantasy.
And in this scene, Princess Kelly is like that damsel in distress, a love story of like, oh, I'm supposed to love the princess. And it leads to a great plot because of the way he navigates this. So going forward from that scene, Mort saves Princess Kelly. This wasn't supposed to happen. Death just told Mort that you can't mess with fate and reality itself. So Kelly lives, but shortly after the assassin's death, people begin to act as if something had happened without knowing why. There's these weird scenes where people are questioning themselves, going like, what's going on? And reality seems to be a little strange right now. Some people are making funeral preparations and they don't know why. It's just really confusing because Mort screwed up. So what happens is Princess Kelly finds out that the world no longer acknowledges her existence for some reason. She's like, what is happening?
And the world itself is trying to self-correct.
It's trying to self-correct because these two realities have been created. One where Princess Kelly died, the one where Mort didn't intervene, and another reality where Mort did intervene and Princess Kelly's alive and the assassin's dead.
Yeah.
Would you consider is this the first ever MCU multiverse? What would you consider with these two realities?
Well, a multiverse typically means like they are separate things and maybe they cross over. In this, it's more two realities existing at the exact same time.
Okay.
And the conflict that comes from that. And it's more of like a Schrodinger's cat type of deal.
Right.
She's both alive and dead. But after that, well, simultaneously, while this is going on, we have death.
We have death scenes, but before we have all the death scenes there, Princess Kelly is going like, what is going on right now? Why does no one acknowledge my existence? So she goes to the wizard Cutwell, who had that message from earlier that said the message of the story to Mort about perception versus reality. So she goes to Cutwell, who is able to see her because wizards are able to see things like death. In the world building of Discworld, wizards can see death and they get a right to be visited by death himself once wizards die. That's just part of the world building, right? Yeah. So she employs Princess Kelly, who is dead to some people, employs Cutwell to be like, hey, make my existence clear to the public, fix this. And meanwhile, Mort figures out that his actions have created this alternate reality where Kelly lives. So he discovers this, but he also understands it's being overridden by the reality which he didn't intervene. So the realities are sort of merging there. And so while consulting Cutwell, Mort goes to consult Cutwell as well. He sees a picture of the Unseen University. And the Unseen University is where wizards such as Cutwell are working and they're doing their wizardry stuff. Is that the best way to explain it? You're the better Discworld knowledger over there.
The Unseen University is the wizard school that is at the heart of Ankh-Morpork, where all magic things are investigated, and where they're kind of farting off.
And when he goes to this, he sees a picture of the Unseen University's founder, who looks very similar to Albert, the manservant of death. And come to find out, the founder of the Unseen University from thousands of years ago is Albert.
Yeah.
So we have Mort and Isabel, who, by the way, throughout all this, one of the funniest plot lines as well is Isabel is madly in love and trying to seduce Mort, and Mort just does not acknowledge it or realize it the whole time. Like, she's got, I don't know, this one scene where she's on the bed and got candles over there, and Mort walks in, she's like, hello, Mort, and Mort's like, Mort. And then and one of the patterns we'll get into when we talk about characters is what Mort's reactions are, but sticky on plot, won't get ahead of myself. So Mort and Isabel, they travel to the library in Death's Domain, which, a cool world building feature, is that it has these biographies of everyone who has ever lived. So they go and they investigate Albert's book, his biography. And the way this magic works with the books is you are also reading what's happening in the current moment. Help me explain that for people who might not have read the book. You get what I mean, Rich?
The book is, if you go to the most current page, it is actively being written
by what's
magically.
happening.
Yes.
So this amazing scene where Terry Pratchett has this way with prose to make it super unique, but also a unique plot element he does is Mort and Isabel find Albert's book and are reading that Albert is below the ladder they climbed up, and they climbed up a ladder to get to Albert's book, and they're reading that Albert right now is on the bottom of the ladder thinking about kicking the ladder over. And they're going like, Albert, he wouldn't, and they're like shouting down, they're like, Albert! There's a scene there where they're reading what's in Albert's head, and Albert can't help it, because it's in the book, it's part of the magic system. So they further learn that Albert had feared monsters waiting for him in the afterlife, and he performed this reverse version of this magic thing that you can do, keeping death away from him. So he was able to go into the library and live kind of forever, like have this immortality of a sense, where Albert went and became the manservant of death. The spell backfired, and that's what happened. He became the manservant of death, and he's been remaining by his side. So during this time, Death is meanwhile I can't say Earth. He's on the Discworld, and Death, while Mort's discovering all of this, is having these human experiences. He's trying to figure out what it's like to have fun.
He goes fishing. He goes drinking at a bar, trying to make friends, trying to get his first job. Well, other than death. And you're going to repeat everything I say.
I just thought we were on a rhythm.
I didn't like that rhythm.
So which was your favorite scene from when Death was going back and trying to become human?
I love them all.
Yeah.
But I think him drinking and trying to become friends is my favorite. Of him just asking, like, is this what people do for fun? It's like, well, it's what people normally do to forget. And he's like, I've never done that before. And he tries to drink away his memories, because it's hard to have fun when you remember everything that ever is, ever was, ever will be. And so I love that. And it's all of these scenes is Death trying to have an emotion, have fun, have sadness, have something other than apathy. And it's the reason why he can't is he doesn't have attachments to the real world. Or he says he does. He doesn't. But we find out as the reader that he has a strange affection and attachment to cats. It's something and he doesn't even know it. He has this weird acknowledgement. He just really likes cats, but he doesn't acknowledge that he likes them. And even when he's fits of anger, he's like protecting the cat and just like slowly pushes away so it doesn't get hurt. And then it gets angry again. Like, I love it. It's just funny.
Exactly. So that scene happens like more toward Act 3, which we'll get into next. But Death has all these little adventures and trying to become human, trying to relate. And that bar scene you're talking about, which we'll get into more with dialogue and prose as well. But he is being like, oh, yeah, are we friends now to the bartender? And he creeps out literally everybody in the bar. Because Death is just not human. He's not normal. So everyone's a little creeped out. He stays way too long. He drinks so many drinks. And the bartender eventually slams the door in Death's face. And you feel bad for Death. You feel like, oh, Death just wanted a bud. That's it. Sometimes that's all I want. And I don't get that either. But me and Death are...
We don't get what we want.
No, not ever. It's but my perception. Okay. So Death's absence then. Death is still trying to discover this human world, and Mort's back up there going like, well, he's absent, and I have 2 more souls to collect now, so I might as well continue doing the bad job I'm doing. So he goes to collect these 2 new souls, and they're located in separate parts of the disc itself. One is in the Agatian Empire. Am I saying that right?
Sure.
And another one is in Sort. And so they're due to die in the same night. And so what happens is, before Mort and Isabel leave to collect the souls, Mort uses the part of Death within him to force Albert to provide a spell that will slow down the alternate reality's destruction, because there's now a ticking clock. Things are happening. You got the timetable going, so you get a little bit of extra ride as you go into the plot. Now, after Mort and Isabel leave, Albert returns to the Unseen University he picks a fake identity. He calls himself Malik. So Albert goes back to this Unseen University, which he founded 2,000 years ago. And his eagerness to live on the disc is reinvigorated during this time. Albert's like, oh, I'm back on the disc. I want to live here again. and he has the wizards perform the rite of Ashkenate. That's the magic thing I was talking about earlier that he did long ago, which led him to becoming the manservant of death. So they perform this rite, and this rite with this magic system, what you're able to do, it summons death himself. The wizards are able to summon death with this magic spell. So death, as he's on all these human adventures, gets summoned back, boom, right there to all these wizards and Albert. And this is where death figures out, wait a second, while I've been going and trying to have fun, Mort, what he did to me is 1, he seduces my daughter. And 2, he destroys the fabric of reality itself. Are you kidding me, Mort? He's furious. And like Rich said, this is one of your favorite moments. He's so angry. I cannot believe you, Mort. He teleports back and he goes, oh, kitty's over here. Let me make sure the kitty's safe. I'm angry. That was his reaction to finding out the fabric of reality. So he still has this love for cats. And it's why death is so endearing. Cat, go on kindly, cat, death says as he's yelling at Mort. But you see these little inklings of humanity and that they're just something could have went wrong in life. Like Death's whole personality is he has to be somewhat apathetic. He can't not kill you. It's the Grim Reaper. It's the hourglass. I must follow fate. But you understand Death well enough to know he does care. There is someone down there.
Well, it's also just so hard for him to care about an individual life when he sees the world. He sees existence differently. He sees it all at once, not moment by moment through time.
And understanding death that way makes you
empathize because you clearly see Death wants that. He's envious of living beings on being able to experience something that he just doesn't understand. It's a color. I guess it's almost, in a way, it's like a colorblind person wanting to see color. Like they still have their own existence, but it's not completely unenviable. It's just different. They can't. Death cannot understand the concept of mortality, but he wants to. Like a colorblind person cannot understand the concept of colors, even if they want to.
Right.
And it's sympathetic.
Right. Good analogy. I like that a lot. And so to go off my tangent and back to what's happening in the story, Death is there. He's furious. He has that moment you love with the cat. He's like, oh, Mort, what did you do, Mort? So meanwhile, Mort and Isabel, Isabel, who's madly in love with Mort doesn't realize it. Great. Love it. They travel to Princess Kelly's palace, where the princess and Cutwell have organized this really quick and hasty coronation in the hope that Kelly can be crowned queen before the alternate reality is destroyed. They're trying to get this done. And so with this reality, now it's too small for Albert's spell because the reality is literally collapsing on them, this timetable of getting closer and closer to being obliterated. Mort and Isabel save Kelly and Cutwell from being destroyed with the alternate reality, and they return to Death's domain to find this furious, enraged Death waiting for them. Mort, you took my daughter. You destroyed my reality. I just imagine Death sounds like that. I don't know why. And so now Death dismisses Mort and attempts to take the souls from Kelly and Cutwell. But Mort instead challenges him to a duel. As epic as Stormlight, as epic as Red Rising. It's duel time. Can Terry Pratchett pull the duel off?
Well, and I love how the duel, in many ways, is not for the sake of others. It's just that Mort is so tired of everyone calling him boy or someone else and not you calling him by his name.
Yeah.
He's like, you know what? If I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die with you calling me by my goddamn name.
One of his character traits has just been this whole time. No one acknowledges Mort.
Yeah.
So everyone calls him boy,
which I find fun. So that is a joke, but also it makes him in many ways similar to Death. One of Death's abilities or powers is that people don't notice him, and they have to focus really hard to see him and acknowledge his presence, and that's what he does naturally. Mort in this is kind of similar. People can't remember his name and kind of have a hard time acknowledging Mort's existence, which in many ways makes him similar to Death.
Right. On the opposite end of the spectrum, because Death is ethereal and Mort is a no-name. Who cares about Mort?
Yeah.
Just like a stranger on the side of the street that you wouldn't give two glances. It's just a simpleton. Mm-hmm. But they have opposite reasons for it.
But it's a similarity. It's fun to see.
The duel itself that happens between Death and Mort is so cool.
Yeah.
It's so well written, and it happens in the area where all these hourglasses are in people's lives, because people's lives are in these hourglasses where it's time to death to come claim their lives on the Discworld. So while they're fighting, they're accidentally destroying hourglasses and breaking them apart. So what actually happens in the Discworld is some people are like falling off hills or getting cardiac arrest, dying of a heart attack because this happened up in Death's domain. So they're all dying here. And I think the Duke is one of those that dies in the actual the Duke who assassinated Princess Kelly's dad way back when this all started is one of those that dies of a heart attack because the hourglass shatters. So the duel ends, and could you remind me as well that the very end of the duel was Death wins the duel, but despite he doesn't kill Mort.
Yeah, he has a moment of he learns a lesson of he has empathy, he has an attachment, and it's mostly through his daughter. He sees how much his daughter cares about Mort. And through that, he decides to spare Mort. And just as Mort's time is running out, the last few grains of sand through his hourglass, Death flips it over.
Yeah.
And let Mort have a bit more time left on it, left alive.
Yeah.
Mainly for his daughter's sake. But it proves that Death already has a type of attachment. It may not be the same as mortals, but he does. He does have empathy, and he disproves his own set rule of destiny being fixed, and that sometimes it's a little fudgeable. I like it because it's more of a statement of there are some things that you have no control over. And acknowledging that sometimes there's nothing you can do. But thinking that way, cutting out all possibility of change, that everything is set in stone, is also wrong. Because sometimes a situation that you may think is impossible, maybe there's a little chance that maybe it's not. And that is important to live. It's vastly important to have that perspective.
Right.
And I love that Death kind of teaches that to us and also to himself.
That's great. Yeah, you really resonate with Death's side of the story as the story went on. So your plot-wise, you look at Death's message.
Yeah.
As really compelling. Did you get something as compelling from Mort's side and Mort's message?
I see it a lot more in the reflection of Death's.
Okay.
So I like the little love triangle story with yes, but I like a lot of the stuff with Mort. But I love the Death's part. That's the only difference. Okay. So like you could replace scenes with Mort. Like if Terry Pratchett wrote the love story a different way, I wouldn't notice. I don't care as much. Like I'm sure it would also be good. Death's scenes seem perfect. There's nothing I would change, nothing I would want changed. I want it forever. Just how it is.
And so how the story ended, I love a good parallel structure. I love using the tools you already learned in the story to end a book. And so at the very end, we get Death spares Mort, and Mort ends up marrying, instead of the princess, marries Isabel. They'll live happily ever after. And because Death talks with the gods, and they come to this agreement and so forth. But I love how the book ends specifically with reading Mort's book. The book that everyone has their own biographies. We already learned this from when Albert, where we were reading Albert as he was trying to destroy the ladder on the bottom. It's writing as you're going. So it ends with Mort's own book talking about what's actually happening in the book itself. You get what I mean? So the book's
going self-referential.
So the book's going within a book, and it ends. The very last page is Mort saying goodbye to Death. And, hey, if you ever need another substitute, Death, I got you. Don't worry. Death is like, I may call you up on that. We'll see. And Mort says goodbye. And Death says, I prefer au revoir. I can't speak French. Au revoir.
I'm just going to let you have that one. I'm not even going to try.
Can you help me? Au revoir. Au revoir. Au revoir's right.
No, it isn't.
Okay. But he says goodbye in French. And I love a good little click at the end. The reason he says it in French is Mort. The name Mort means death in French.
Yeah.
So nice little tying up at the end there. But the thing that impressed me the most about the plot is the efficiency. Like you looked at Death's plot and went, "There's nothing."
Well, we talked about a lot of stuff, and man, is this a pretty short book?
Oh, the good point. It is a very short book, and it's just so efficient with its storytelling. And within all of that actual important plot stuff, it's just ridiculous fun. Where there's too many scenes to mention, but the one that just stands out to me as a funny plot scene that was literally a paragraph is when Albert, who is 2,000 years old, comes back to Earth, right? Is coming back and eventually performs the ritual, gets Death back, but he comes back to this old bar, the Mended Drum, which has somehow lasted 2,000 years. And he's arguing with the bartender because his father and his father's father and his father's father's father at this bar have the whole place has survived one regicide, 3 civil wars, 61 major fires, 490 robberies, etc., 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 all to record the fact that Albert still owes money on the tab from 2,000 years ago. And that's just one paragraph of part of the plot. It's like a little side thing, and there's all these little nuggets throughout the plot that happen that just make it constantly funny, keep you engaged, but also keeps the story moving.
Yeah.
That's so impressive. And so Terry Pratchett's able to make you smile while this message is also being shown to you. Like you got a lot out of Death's messages, it seems
a ton.
And
even further, we're talking about perception, reality. I love how this ties into the magic of the world with the gods and the more celestial beings of Discworld. Is the gods get power from belief, and the number of believers a particular god has affects how strong and how powerful these gods are.
Right.
And in the end of the book, you kind of show how Death lives separately from the gods, but when it comes down to it, Death's top dog. Death has the most power. And he kind of, walks in, just saunters into the gods' realm and kind of like lays down the law. They're trying to, it's like, I'm Death. Shut up. And you think to yourself, and they try and draw this distinction that Death is not particularly a god. He isn't a god. He's been there from the beginning of reality, and he is there at the end. He's the beginning and ending of it, all reality. And so he is not a god. However, as I see it, is if divine power comes from belief in Discworld, who is more believed in than Death itself? Every living being, creature, believes in Death, knows that Death is coming. That type of certainty throughout all time, all creatures believe in Death. And so, of course, Death is the most powerful. The most people believe in him.
Yeah. And why belief is more important than reality.
Yeah.
Every facet of this book works.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a great observation you have there. And when we first talked about this and you brought that, I was like, oh,
doesn't it just fit?
It just fits. It just fits. And that's why the absurdity of the world isn't just absurd at all. It makes sense. Everything that is supposed to be nonsensical ties together with the message of the story. So good. Is there anything else you want to discuss in plot, or would you like to move on to these characters?
Let's move on to the characters. What did you give the character score?
An 8.5.
A solid score.
What'd you give them?
I gave characters a 7.75.
Okay, very good.
If it was just Death, it would be a 10 out of 10.
Let's talk about the main characters first. Death, Mort, then we'll go on to some of the side characters. But
we did talk quite a bit about the characters, so this will be a little briefer.
Yeah, but with Death, I want to start with a description of who this character is. This is how we get introduced to Death first time in Mort. The figure's hood fell back. Naked skull turned its empty eye sockets toward him. Not quite empty, though. Deep within them, as though they were dhows looking across the gulfs of space, were 2 tiny blue stars. You get this great description of Death, and that's also on the... Is he on the cover here?
He is.
Yes, he's on the cover here. Great visual. And we talked about Death a lot, but what sums up the character perfectly is that scene where he pushes the cat away, a little bit like this. But talking about Death so much, is there any nuance you want to add on top of what you mentioned on Death as a character and his meaning here?
Because of Death's separation from mortals, it gives us a better insight of what makes us truly mortal, because we take it for granted what makes us human and what makes us little fleshy creatures. But death trying to find it is a more, we can appreciate the little things that make us who we are.
Yeah.
And so that is the fun part of, because death is envious and is jealous of what we take for granted.
Yeah.
I love it.
And since we talked about death too much, I will add on to that, but let's go to Mort briefly, because I think we really underplayed Mort.
Sure.
Where, again, the description of Mort is so great. He was tall, red-haired, and freckled, with the sort of body that seemed to be only marginally under its owner's control and appeared to have been built out of knees.
Built out of knees? It
just works.
I would never think of that description. That sounds like nonsense on paper. And then, like, I get it. I completely understand what he means.
You see a person that's, like, on the skinnier side, but the knees are just, they jut out, and he's kind of lanky, like, and it's just the way he moves.
All the joints are pronounced and just kind of, weird and bony.
It makes sense.
Yeah, completely.
And it makes sense that Mort's a weird, bony guy.
Yeah.
And the backwards way of thinking we mentioned before, where this is literally page 4 of the book, where it says, Mort wonders why the sun only comes out during the day and not during the night when it'd be more useful. Like, yeah, okay, I get his frame of thinking. I get it completely.
It's just stupid.
It's just stupid. And that part of his character where nobody pays attention to him, people call him boy. Death calls him boy. At one point, I think the narration calls him it. And so Mort is just seen as just overlooked and he's always looked down on, and everyone's condescending toward him. And so he has this moment of every time somebody calls him boy, he will respond with like, Mort. And then he'll say like, Mort, he said automatically, or Mort, he said frustratingly, or Mort, it's Mort. But he'll never go further than that. It's just a very simpleton of like, my name's Mort. Why I love that aspect of his character, not only at the end where he faces in the duel with death, of you think he's completely naive. Mm-hmm. You think he's just this pushover character, but he does have a sense of backbone. His knees, his joints have got some bones to him, he might get pushed over a lot, but he does have a sense of self-identity. He does have a sense of maybe not pride, but just self-respect. Because this person like him, you could see how, he's dumb and he's a backwards way of thinking. Like, think very little of himself. No, he's not like me. He doesn't think that low of himself. Mort has his character. It's just, I look up to him. Like, imagine that. The character I look up to is Mort. But it says something about it makes him so easy to root for, where a worse author could have just written this character as like the complete pushover, the complete ridiculousness. But it adds an element of rootability of, yeah, Mort, that is your name. Let's go, queen. Like, what do they say nowadays? Slay.
Yeah, try and appeal to the fellow youth.
The fellow youths. All right.
Youths.
So that's why I really liked Mort's character going into this. And not to give spoilers, this is not spoilers for Small Gods, but he very much reminds me of Brother in some ways from Small Gods. Now, Brother, the character in Small Gods, they're not the same character, but they're definitely the more, what's the word I'm looking for? Is it naive to a sense, but it's not a complete detriment. Their naivety is both one of their pros, but also flaws to their character.
They're, in many ways, they're kind of opposites, where Brother has, his thinking is pure memorization, and he doesn't have any original thoughts until, of course, story. But
so the story happens, right?
But beginning, because he has perfect memory, he doesn't need to think about something himself. He can go back through his memory and knows what has been told to him. So he doesn't need to have an original thought, because all thoughts are there for him to pick through. Mort is different. He's incredibly creative. It's just stupid. It's stupidly creative. But because he's not incredibly intelligent, he doesn't remember everything. He has to creatively think of things. Knowledge, a lack of knowledge, is necessary for you to creatively think.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how he can have that little sense of discovery.
Yeah, you're right. They are different, but the similar personality between the two of them, where Brother being more memory and intelligent in that way, and Mort being more creative, they're so, I guess, stuck in their ways and before they have their character arc that they come across as very abnormal. And maybe that abnormality. You had trouble too trying to show me up with the words. That abnormality in their character.
Abnormality.
That's it. Yeah,
There you go.
Abnormality. So they're so abnormal because their way of thinking is so. Would it be what's the word I'm looking for then? Instead of abnormality, what do you think? Am I off base here on they have a very similar presence on the page when I'm reading them? Is naive the right word?
They have they are overlooked. They're both characters that everyone else looks down on.
Yeah,
for different reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, similar reasons. They both think odd.
Yeah,
and everyone kind of sees them as completely stupid. And they both have something to offer. Everyone looks down on them. They learn to respect them in some way.
It's that trope that we read in Save the Cat, one of the genres of this. Save the Cat is a story about like how to write a story, storytelling structures. It was that protagonist, the overlooked protagonist. Though not your typical hero, not your Kaladin, Darrow, Percy Jackson, etc. That becomes the hero and has their character arc. This is the person that nobody thinks about, and no, they shouldn't affect the story, but they really do. Yeah, you're totally spot on with that. Anything with more, or want to touch some of the side characters and then get on to, okay.
Let's go on to some of the side characters.
I want to bring up Isabel immediately because I really liked how she was the epitome of that parody of the enemies to lovers trope. So I think he was really pushing in on that. Hey, they should, this is the greatest scene, I think, between the two of them is the fight back and forth between Isabel and Mort, where this is the line from Isabel. She says, "I wouldn't marry you if you were the last man on the disc," she said sweetly. Mort was hurt by this. It was one thing to not want to marry someone, but for them not to want to marry you, so that sort. And so they proceed to have this back and forth where, they make fun of each other's looks. Like her eyes look like eggs. Your legs look off. Mort, you're simple-minded. And they have these insults to the point where Isabel even says something about his legs, makes a comment. And Mort's like, "Oh, what's that mean?" And she goes, "Oh, it means your legs are bandy." And Mort's like, "Ah, good one." So... And it ends with them just being like, good. Obviously, we wouldn't be good together. Right, of course. And it's just that big flag of this is every enemy's the lovers trope, right? Where they're supposed to push back against each other ridiculously, and it's a joke on romance and so forth. And again, the scene where she's trying to seduce him so clearly and more being oblivious to this, just he doesn't think that way. But each character here seems to be there for that parody reason. Her, Princess Kelly, Cutwell is just your wizard archetype character. And then we also have to mention Binky, the horse. Anything else with characters that you want to analyze?
Nah, I think we should move on to dialogue.
My favorite part.
Yes.
The dialogue of Prose, what did you rate it out of 10, Rich?
I initially gave it an 8 out of 10.
Initially?
I kind of want to raise it to a 9.25.
Okay, because so is 9.25 your official rating?
I'm going to officially change it.
What's that bring your overall rating to?
9.25.
Well, no, for your total scores now 8.2.
8.2.
That's a big difference. Yep. That's a big difference because I gave Dialogue of Prose a 9.75.
Yeah.
It's pretty flawless. I don't even want to mention my complaint because I'm stupid and I don't deserve to utter the word. So I'll just talk about the love for it. The first thing we have to mention is you said how he has all these unique ways of using writing tools and these quirks that other people don't do. One of them being the asterisks at the bottom. And how that works is just when you're reading a line, there's an asterisk at the end of the sentence, you go down and it expands upon this one little portion of text about one day there was people didn't like how kings decided everything. So they created a government where there was a plutarch of like one person who could decide everything. And it's called the one person democracy. These ridiculous tangents about that expand on the world and have these fun.
And it works because it's a complete aside. And I guess you don't technically need to read it to continue on with the story, but it's the visual break of you moving away from the sentence or the paragraph to go down below to read this little excerpt. That's always just a little factoid about the world that just makes the world lovely, and then basically adds on to the joke that was told in the story. Is perfect. Why would another author would just try and fit that fact inside some line of dialogue or fit it into an explanation that where it would feel awkward, and in this way it just feels fun.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's amazing. And he has these tools like the asterisk. He has the other tool you mentioned where Death's dialogue and how it looks different. It's more this bold in text, and so he has this presence on the page.
It literally is just bold text without quotation marks.
Right.
Because death is the world. And who knew? Just having bold text in there completely makes death feel so alien and large and oppressive. I love it. It's so good.
I do not love the way you looked at me when you said that. Yes, you're totally right. And there's these other small things that Terry Pratchett does. Here's one of my favorite. And instead of saying the F word, he uses dashes in Mort, where this is from the book. It goes, "Well, dash, dash, dash me," he said. "A dash, dash, dash wizard. I dash, dash, dashing wizards. I dash, dash, dash wizards. You shouldn't." And then the other person replies, "You shouldn't dash, 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 dash them then," muttered one of his henchmen, effortlessly pronouncing a row of dashes. So, you're reading the dashes going, oh, he's just, he's
muting it out.
He's muting out the F word. And then the character acknowledges that, why were you saying dashes out loud? That was one of the scenes we didn't even mention because there's so many fun scenes here where Mort is getting picked on by these henchmen. And this kind of it's again a parody of the bullying trope of these guys come up to you, give me your money, and okay, I'm about to go through a bunch of lines if you don't mind that are just
shoot them off,
hilarious to me. Here's some funny ones. One being, scientists have calculated that the chance of anything so patently.
I love it. I like it. Go. Okay. It's one of my favorite lines.
Okay. Scientists have calculated that the chance of anything so patently absurd actually existing are millions to one. But magicians have calculated that 1,000,000 to 1 chances crop up 9 times out of 10. It's so good.
I love it. That's my favorite thing. Oh, God. Okay. Did it happen in this book or is it in another Discworld book?
Which one?
I'm going to describe a scene to you. I hope I'm not spoiling us. It's a line from a book. That is a thing in Discworld. 1,000,000 to 1 odds.
Yeah.
Are going to happen 9 times out of 10.
Exactly.
If it's 1,000,000 to 1, it's a good shot.
Guaranteed.
It's
Yeah.
basically. And a thing is happening in Discworld and they go, and they're like, this is impossible. The odds are 1,000,000 to 1. And then the wizard, the wizard who's freaking out about it, turns and looks and goes, 1,000,000 to 1
That's
odds?
not in this book,
exactly? It goes, yeah, the odds are 1,000,000 to 1. It goes,
that's going to happen.
That's great. Fantastic.
That's not in Mort. That's in a different one for
it's
sure.
A different book.
Okay.
I loved it. It's that means it's going to happen.
It's just odds work differently in Discworld.
Yeah.
I got to say, that's a great line. Does not even compare to some of these for me. So when I give the dialogue 9.75 to this, freaking genius. Yeah. He's a masterful, no, not a writer, an artist. The Mona Lisa, but better.
I'll be honest. The only reason I'm not giving Terry Pratchett a 10 on dialogue and prose is because I think Terry Pratchett does better. I'm not comparing him to someone else. I'm going
Terry Pratchett, you have a better one out there,
Terry
right?
Terry Pratchett, you're only losing to yourself. That's it. That's all I'm saying.
And this will confirm even more. Here's some more lines. Let's just have fun with these lines, right?
Okay.
I love this line with my entire being, okay? Mm-hmm. This is where Mort and Death are traveling across the land on Binky the horse, going and seeing. So this is the narration. This was a rich country full of silt and rolling cabbage fields and neat little kingdoms whose boundaries wriggled like snakes as small, formal wars, marriage pacts, complex alliances, and the occasional bit of sloppy cartography changed the political shape of the land. You just imagine how drawing the map difference. Like, oh, you own that part. I messed up. It's just how well described it is, and then the funny bit there. It's just sloppy cartography changing the political landscape of the world is such a Discworld thing.
Well, it's also a real world thing. It's a funny reaction to like the British Empire, the British, which Terry Pratchett is English. If you don't know, which is that's clearly a reference to that, but it's hilarious. I just love how the squiggly, like slithering, squiggling lines of the country, like that specific line description is so funny but so descriptive. I love it.
Yes,
I would never have described something that way.
No,
and that's why he's the GOAT.
He is the GOAT. He's one. Yeah. Him and Pierce Brown, same pros.
Don't you dare. No. I don't even think Pierce Brown would agree with you on that.
No, they have completely different styles. Completely
different. And one is significantly better than the other.
I love them both. But with Terry Pratchett as well, you saying the British Empire, he has this. Terry Pratchett is British. He has this British humor that I really appreciate. Maybe if a British person's reading this, they get less fun out of it, but I get so much fun out of this humor.
I'm sure they do.
I hope so, because from the American perspective, I'm dying laughing at stuff like this, where Mort's freaking out because he just went through a wall. He was starting to become death and transform into things that only death can do. And he says to this stall holder, he goes, "Can you see me?" he demanded. The stall holder squinted critically at him. "I reckon so," he said, "or someone very much like you." "Oh, thank you," said Mort, immensely relieved. "Don't mention it. I see lots of people every day. No charge. Want any bootlaces?" Just these little things of the sarcastic British dialogue going back and forth, like that's a normal thing in the day for some innkeeper. And the scene we were just talking about where he's getting robbed. And it's this parody on the bullying archetype. And where they say, "Give us your money." Okay. This might be my favorite line. Every line I say is my favorite line, where they're saying, "Hey, give us your money," essentially. And the narration says, "One of them had drawn a knife, which he waved in little circles in the air. He advanced slowly towards Mort, while the other two hung behind to provide immoral support." because they're bad guys. You can't give moral support when you're immoral. Just the one line there. That's so immoral. It's genius. It's like, that's funny. That's just humor. If you don't laugh at come on, that's great.
Oh God, that's hilarious.
To provide immoral support to the guy Robin. Let's go, buddy.
Oh God.
Oh. And then not to mention, like, with the world building, the way the world's described, so good. So here's this. River Ankh, greatest of rivers. Even before it entered the city, it was slow and heavy with the silt of the plains. And by the time it got to the shades, even an agnostic could have walked across it. Funny and a great accurate. So what you're doing, Terry Pratchett, is you're doing so many things at once where you're describing it in a funny way, but also showing in a great analogy of, hey, Jesus could walk on water. Even an agnostic could walk across it. That's how filthy the river is. The river is literally so filthy with silt and stuff that even an agnostic could walk across it. Bang, bang, bang. Hook, line, and sinker. Let's go, Terry. That's... Do you need to say any more? Or you want me to just keep going?
It's perfect. Go. Keep going.
Again, more with the sarcastic British humor, right? Where Mort asked Cutwell the wizard, "What time's sunset round here?" Cutwell says, "We normally manage to fit it between night and day." Just, the sarcastic British, just give me more of that. Thank you. That's it. That's all I need. And this is where the narrative's saying, it might be worth taking another look at Mort, because he's changed a lot over these last few chapters. Like where the narration starts to... it goes out of the narration itself and it's talking directly to the reader, and these kind of narrative tricks that Terry Pratchett uses of, Mort having an internal dialogue with himself in his conscious, or the narration talking to the reader and being like, hey, it's worth taking another look at Mort here. He's changed a lot in these last few chapters where you go like, wait a second, I'm being like, the story's being told to me at the same time, but I'm also, it's like third person omniscient.
Makes you feel a part of it.
Makes you feel a part of it. And another funny line here, where this guy's wife, Mrs. Gwisdell Mims, Here's a line about her and their relationship. So Mrs. Grimsdale Mims, with whom Mr. Grimsdale Mims had enjoyed 6 happy months of married life. That had been some 20 years previously. Just cute little lines.
Yeah.
And this is a feature. I don't have the exact line written out here, but Mort is essentially reading about Albert and the line. He's this 2,000-year-old wizard. He's reading Albert's book or so forth, and he closes and goes, "It's written in old," he said. Like, he can't understand it. It's written in old. It was before they invented spelling. Great lines. And I'll finish up with a couple more funny ones, and then these I got to get all these good lines from Terry out here. So here's another narration line. Mort talking about, he was determined to discover the underlying logic behind the universe, which was going to be hard because there wasn't one. Classic. And this is describing Ankh-Morpork, or
Ankh-Morpork. No, you got it right.
I did.
You got it. You pronounced it correctly.
I like that.
First time. I'm impressed.
And this was I forget where this was, in some sort of scene, but it goes, he'd been wrong. There was a light at the end of the tunnel, and it was a flamethrower. And this year's not a funny line, but it's just so well described. I have to mention this. Mm-hmm. It's when Death is in the bar with humans, and it says, the narration says, they were sufficiently observant to be vaguely worried by the tall, dark figure standing by the bar and drinking his way through its entire contents. Lonely, dedicated drinkers always generate a mental field which ensures complete privacy, but this particular one was radiating a kind of fatalistic gloom that was slowly emptying the bar. This didn't worry the barman because the lonely figure was engaged in a very expensive experiment. Yes?
Yeah.
What else to say there?
You're never going to write anything that good.
No, never.
You understand?
Do you understand? I look at children's books and go, that's already tough enough to match.
Yeah.
Terry's just, come on. And another quick line, wizards consider appearances are very important. So are disappearances. He vanished. Lovely lines.
Yeah.
What else is there to say other than Terry has a way with words and describing? See, that scene with Death, that very simply put, it puts you in the world of how everybody else is uncomfortable. The presence that Death gives perfectly gets you in the world.
Well, so that scene with Death, I think, is a good example of what perfect writing is and what it's supposed to do. That whole scene and couple lines with Death, what does it do? One, it gives an accurate description of Death himself. It gives a perfect description and a visual description of where the scene is taking place. It also gives you more insight into the world and how the world sees Death, the world building aspect of it. It also carries forward the plot. Why is Death there? What is he doing? It's an expensive experiment. You go through you have more insight into character on how people are thinking, what Death is thinking. It does everything. And also is a very fun scene.
Yeah.
And it literally goes through all 5 of our categories and pushes them forward in some way.
It's incredible.
Everything.
Yeah.
That is master. Yeah. That is a master wordsmith.
And you only give it a 9.25. I give it a 9.75. What you gonna do about it?
I'm just saying, Terry does it better sometimes.
Oh yeah. He is incredible.
That's the only thing. The only reason is I'm like, I know Terry has 10s. This is not his best work. It's the best out of everyone. But Terry himself is in another league. So I have to give room
for more Terry.
That's it.
Got you.
Between everyone else, like, if no one else existed, like, if this was absent, like, this is the only Terry Pratchett book.
10
compared to everyone else. But compared to Terry, only a 9.25. That's it.
Just a meager 9.25.
A meager 9.25.
I can't say enough. Like, what else do you want to say about his prose other than he does exactly that? He pushes so many things forward in each sentence. The word efficiency. We've gone on to talk about this simple book, but from a simpleton character, and we are talking so much about it because he packs a punch in every scene that gives you so much to talk about.
this is probably one of our more longer review videos. And this is also one of the shortest books we've reviewed.
Yeah, it is
Think
very
about that.
short. Yeah,
That's pretty amazing.
it is. Yeah, this reminds me of a Pure Nessie type, where Pure Nessie's not a comedy or anything.
No.
But it's so efficient and it packs a punch where there's so much to talk about. And your similar stories, whereas nothing bad about the story, but All Systems Red by Martha Wells, really fun and great story.
Love it.
Solid. I think I gave it like an 8 something like that. Great. But pretty easy to talk about.
There's like a layer beneath
Yep.
than what the story is saying, which is fun to talk about.
And that by the way, that's what it intends to do.
Exactly.
It's not like it's going for more of what Mort's doing or what another story's doing.
Terry has Terry's an onion. You peel back and there's so many layers underneath that you can talk about, which is just every time you read it, you find something new.
Man, we're bonding. We're
Yep.
bonding. Want to get into the last category?
Yep.
All right, this is the world building / magic system. What'd you rate it out of 10?
I gave it an 8.25 out of 10.
I give it an 8.5. We're right there.
The only reason I'm not giving it a 10 out of 10 is because Terry Pratchett does it better. Terry Pratchett is in a league. If I'm comparing this to everyone else, 10 out of 10. But I have to compare Terry to Terry. And Terry to Terry, this is only an 8.25. Sometimes other books, Terry gets a 10. So
Terry also always must be compared to himself.
Exactly. He is the top of the league.
He is his greatest enemy and friend because the only person who can be better than Terry's Terry.
Exactly.
Okay, I understand you.
There has to be room to grow for Terry himself.
Now, there's a lot to say with the world. I think the most important thing that Discworld does, beyond the specific, we could talk about the disc, we could talk about death, and we already kind of mentioned a lot of that, but this is important for all stories, is tone. What does the world provide to you tonally? Like, of course, I have to mention this once per video, but Red Rising, Red Rising, the tone of Red Rising is there. The tone of Stormlight is there. I will even compare it to the Stormlight, the Red Risings, all those I've read. The tone for Terry Pratchett is for what it intends to do, is the most clear and perfect of any story. It really is, where the tone is supposed to be whimsy, absurd, fun, to the extent that even in this world where people are dying, like for example, in this very story, there's this evil guy, this malicious duke who's trying to assassinate the princess. And there's these malicious people, there's these henchmen. There are bad people in this world, but even with the evil that lurks around, the whimsy still prevails. The tone is still there, and that is done, one, with how it's written, and two, the world that's created and that you're able to immerse yourself in. You always not only know what to expect. So great stories do the 3 things. We've talked about this before. Promise, progress, payoff. You are constantly promised a tone, and you are constantly paid off with the tone that you expect to get yourself into. And so even when there's an impactful message of, we're talking about perception versus reality, fate, all this stuff, all this bullshit, which is amazing shit. It's supposed to be nonsensical, which makes it sensical. It's so cool because we're talking about a silly story that is whimsy, but it's able to have these quote unquote serious moments. But those serious moments and serious messages and evil people are still with the undertone of you're having fun and hilarity ensues. That is masterful.
Yeah. Not only tone, but I think what Terry Pratchett expertly does, which so many other authors, maybe if they don't fail at it, they fall short of the mark, is internal consistency.
Oh, yes.
Discworld is tonally and internally consistent. The logic makes sense in its nonsense. One, it's harder to do. To do a absurdist fantasy that actually is coherent and makes sense and has a certain absurd logic to it is way harder than doing a serious fantasy and have it tonally and internally consistent.
Right. If you go beyond the line of breaking your absurdist rules, it becomes unreal. And if anything could happen, it defeats your suspension of disbelief that this isn't fun anymore.
Yeah. Well, Discworld breaks the rules by making different rules around. Like, here's your box of fantasy rules.
Great circle, Rich. Yeah,
great circle.
Audio only listeners are getting a great visual. Yeah, look at that circle.
Breaks it.
Yeah.
And makes it a little larger. But the rules are still there. So, like, while you're inside the Discworld rules, you feel like you're hovering around. You're going, oh man, this is absurd. This is crazy, because you're going past the rules that you're used to. Those rules are broken, but you're still within Discworld's rules. And that is still consistent. So that way you still care. You still actually care about the characters in the world because it feels real.
A great small example of this, because let's talk about the larger things as well, with what Mort does of death, of the disc, of all this stuff. A small paragraph example is the reannual plants, where there are reannual plants. This is what Mort and his family do. They distill grapes from reannual plants. What are reannual plants? Well, reannual plants are you sow the seed this year and the crop grows last year. Okay? Now, Mort's family specializes in the grapes, which obviously makes wine. So these are very well sought after by fortune tellers, of course. So the only problem is that when you drink this kind of wine that's distilled from reannual grapes, is you get the hangover the morning before you drink. So you have to drink a lot to get over the hangover from the reannual grapes. It's just, it both is nonsense, but also creates this fabric of rules that, you've said this many times before, of Discworld has a way of going, if someone else just said, hey, this could happen in Discworld, let me toss an absurd thing, like a flying bunny. You go, no. Like a flying bunny doesn't make sense in Discworld. That doesn't add to the presence you're looking for, where this whole thing, if there's one thing to take away from Discworld, it's that everything works together and weaves together. The world works with the plot works with the characters work with the dialogue. Everything combines where, that's a Discworld line. That's a Discworld world building tactic right there. You can't just have a flying Toyota in the sky. Doesn't make sense in Discworld.
Yeah.
So it's not like your tangents you usually go on, where modern art has no rules. Discworld has rules.
Discworld does have rules. It just makes new ones. It breaks the old and makes new. And that's wonderful.
It is. And in this specifically, we get a lot more with Death and Death's world, how he treats victims of... I shouldn't even call them victims. They're not.
Passengers.
Passengers, exactly.
Passengers on the road from life to death.
And some of them get reincarnated again because it propels the message of the story about perception and belief over reality. It all intertwines together. It's why this is so satisfying. And you get the consistency as well with, in Death's world, you have these libraries of people's biographies and how words have meaning. And the more words there are, the more intensity and the more pain you have while reading them with wizards and so forth. Everything intertwines. You have the disc itself. You want to discuss the disc in this world?
The fact that, it's just Discworld, a flat earth. That's what it is. But then you go beyond that of it's on the back of 4 elephants riding on the back of a turtle flying through space. And then all the little details of explorers that just kind of fall off the edge. And all the further details of how this would even work are explored and have this fun little sense, like, where is Death's world? Well, Death's world in this context is kind of hovering around the disc. It's not, it's a little separate, but it's the God's realm is here, the Death is here. It all makes sense.
It does.
I love it. This makes more sense than Red Rising's world.
Here we go.
No, and I'm not even picking on any fantasy sci-fi world.
I know.
They're cool. They're interesting. They can make sense. They're not as coherent as Discworld. Nothing. Lord of the Rings maybe comes close. But you know what? I'd say Discworld's more consistent with itself.
I get you. Hey, I'm not going to disagree with you on Discworld is super coherent. And Discworld creates this, you're able to suspend your disbelief for things that wouldn't make sense in this disbelieving world. The nonsense makes sense. It's like a paradox, but it works. And there's these, we can go into several elements, but here's a specific, right? Okay. There's the listeners, the religion, the listeners who only stay alive because the gods are like, I'm curious what they can hear. Like the gods could just smite them to death if they wanted to, but they're like, I do want to hear what the listeners who are trying to figure out what the first word that God said when he created the universe was. Yeah. Just, okay. There's these little nuggets throughout the entire book. I can't mention them all. We can't mention them all. But the ever-present thing we can talk about is the tone of the story. The consistency, the coherency you're talking about is all wonderful.
Oh, God.
It just makes you feel cozy when you pick up a Discworld book and you just know what you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing better in reading than that.
There's almost, I hate to say it this way, but there's almost never complete surprise from Discworld. And I mean that in the right way of my expectations are never subverted. I'm all like, after something happens, maybe it's shocking in the moment, but I go, oh yes, that makes sense. I'm like,
Mort
I
talking
shouldn't
like
be
that.
surprised. Exactly. I'm like, of course. I never have that moment of like, I never could have saw this coming. I go, I should have seen this coming. Which is very different. It's what I don't like about some storytelling, where they do this shocking thing and it's just,
That's all it has is the shock value.
it's all it is. And then you go, you could tell someone wrote that and it isn't real. It isn't what would actually happen in the story that's being told. Where this one, it just feels like, oh, of course that's what would happen in the story.
Right.
And that's the world building.
I think we should probably review more Discworld books if we want to stay better friends. Because,
Probably.
when we talk about our other books, Wheel of Time, there's a little tension.
Here's the thing.
Red Rising, there's a little tension.
Do you want a long-lasting friendship? And if you
No.
do,
No. The answer's no.
If we want this to last long, we got to pace ourselves. Because we got 42 Discworld books.
Yeah.
And then once those are done, that's it.
No,
Our friendship's gone after that.
We could just reread them.
Nope.
So we have a timeline. We have an hourglass.
Yep.
On our friendship is when we are done with all 42 Discworld books on
That's
this
it.
channel. The channel ends, our friendship ends, and the world ends.
Yep. You guys all have a time limit. So this is going to be a countdown as we're working through Discworld, and as we start getting closer and closer to book number 42, you'll know that that's where the end is coming.
And you know what we're going to do as I'm holding the stuffed animal that fell? You know what we're going to do exactly? I think we should start now with Discworld going 1 to 42.
Mm-hmm.
We did, I think 13 is Small Gods, 4 is Mort. We should now start going in order, and we could show the channel viewers like when the channel is going to end is the closer we get to that 42 number.
That'd be kind of fun.
Like that is a ticking time bomb. And
Yeah.
if we don't want the channel done, we just stop at 41. But it's always there.
It's always there.
It's if we ever want to review
The last review on our channel
book 42
will
of
be
this
book 42.
And by then we've moved on to something else.
Yeah.
And you know what? We created a new reality because we believed in something greater.
I like it.
Just like
And
Mort wanted
I
us
think
to.
you guys think we're joking. We're not.
100% serious.
100%.
Shake on it.
Shake.
It's done. We never
We will-
reject the handshake.
That will
The
promise
yeah.
that if you ever see book 42 of Discworld on this channel, that is the last
The
video.
end of the channel.
That's the end. We won't do a single video on our Two to Ramble channel after that.
Deal.
That's it.
That's so fun.
Yeah. I like it.
I really like it. I'm excited on this journey now. That's just
So if we ever want to end it a little quicker, you're just going to start seeing like, man, they did like 5 Discworld books in a row. Are they okay?
Man, this is getting a little uncomfortable.
See, it both brings us together and also quickens the end.
So every single Discworld book review is bittersweet.
Just like
Sweet.
birthdays. Birthdays is a celebration and yet is a reminder that you're 1 year closer to death.
Oh, yeah. So every Discworld book is the same.
Yeah.
Wow. But for us, it's just sweet because it's, we're closer to freedom.
Closer to freedom. Yes.
Well, I hope you guys liked that Mort review. I love Discworld books.
I did.
That was
Yeah.
fun.
All right. Let us know what you guys think about Mort down in the description below, and join our Patreon if you want to talk with us about Discworld books and other books and the like.
Yes. Do
We'll
that
see you
too.
guys in the next video.
See you in the next video.
Bye-bye.
Next video is episode 42. Not 42. It's book 42 of Discworld.
Book 42. That's the next one.
Bye.
Bye.